10 months before the fire, a council engineer named Andrew Shaw climbed into the main stand at Valley Parade to look at the roof. He never got to the roof. Underneath the wooden seats, he found a void packed with 20 years of rubbish, crisp packets, cigarette ends, an old newspaper. On 18 July 1984, his department put the warning in writing to the club. The timber construction was a fire hazard, and a carelessly discarded cigarette could give rise to a fire risk. The letter was stapled to another one about a grant, filed in a drawer, and never acted on. The chairman later called it a simple mistake. On 11th May 1985, in that same stand, a cigarette did exactly what the letter said it would. 56 people never went home. The stand was destroyed in 4.5 minutes, faster than a man could run. This is the story of the Bradford City fire, a disaster that was described in writing before it happened, and then filed away. It is also the story of what came after, an inquiry held in 25 days, a verdict of accident, and the questions a grieving survivor spent 30 years asking that no one in authority would answer. To understand why that letter mattered, you have to understand the stand it described. Valley Parade's main stand was built in 1908 and barely touched since. It was made almost entirely of wood, timber seats on a timber frame, a wooden floor with gaps between the boards, and a roof of timber sealed with layers of bituminous felt and asphalt. Beneath the seats ran a void, a foot to 3 feet deep, that had been quietly filling with litter for decades. When investigators later dug through it, they found a newspaper dated November 1968. The rubbish under those seats was older than some of the people sitting on them. The danger was not a secret. The National Code of Safety for Football Grounds, the Green Guide, had warned since 1976 about exactly this: voids under seating that collect paper and cartons, waiting to be lit unnoticed by a carelessly discarded cigarette end. It said such spaces should be sealed off. At Valley Parade, they never were. Andrew Shaw was not the first to notice. In 1980, a health and safety inspector walking the ground spotted the inflammable litter under the main stand and wrote to the club. The void should be cleared and blanked off. In 1983, the football historian Simon Inglis visited, saw the build-up beneath the stand, and warned them too. And in July 1984 came the clearest warning of all: Shaw's letter, naming the timber, naming the rubbish, naming the cigarette. 3 warnings across 4 years, saying the same thing. None of them was acted on. Part of the reason was money. Bradford City was a small club, and rebuilding the stand was expensive. But part of it was a gap in the law. The Safety of Sports Grounds Act of 1975 required safety certificates for large grounds, but only for clubs in the top 2 divisions. Bradford City was in the 3rd division. Valley Parade held around 20,000 people, far above the size the law was written for, and none of it applied. The 1984 letter said as much. It framed every warning as something that would matter should, at some time in the future, the provisions of the Act apply. Because the law did not yet reach Bradford, a documented, specific danger was written down as a theoretical concern for another day. That day was closer than anyone in the drawer knew. Bradford City had just won promotion to the 2nd division, and a meeting to bring the ground up to standard was scheduled for 15th May 1985. The fire came on 11th May. Saturday, 11th May 1985, was meant to be a celebration. Bradford City had already won the 3rd Division Championship, their first trophy in 56 years. Before kickoff against Lincoln City, the cup was presented in front of 11,000 people. The main stand was full, around 3,000 supporters in a structure the club planned to start demolishing in 2 days' time. The steel for its replacement was already sitting in the car park behind it. Kickoff was at 3 o'clock. The first half was forgettable and goalless, played into a stiff wind blowing off the pitch and into the main stand. At around 3:45, about 5 minutes before half-time, a small glow appeared in Block G, a few rows up. A man had dropped a lit cigarette. It slipped through a gap in the floorboards into the void below. He poured a cup of coffee after it, and for a moment the smoke seemed to stop. Then it came back, bigger. From the far side of the ground, television commentator John Helms saw it first. Yorkshire Television's cameras were there only because Bradford were champions. They had come to film a celebration. Helms' words went out live. "We've actually got a fire in the stand on the far side of the ground, and that looks very nasty indeed." For the next few minutes, ordinary chances to stop it closed one by one. A spectator ran to the back of the stand for a fire extinguisher. There were none there. A man tried to tear up the floorboards to reach the fire underneath and could not. A police officer shouted for an extinguisher. The message was misheard, and the fire brigade was called instead. The right call, but it bought no time. The brigade was 4 minutes away. The wind did the rest. It pushed the flames off the void, up the wooden seats, and into the roof. The felt and asphalt overhead caught and began to burn and then to drip. What had been a glow in one block became a wall of fire moving along the length of the stand. The referee stopped the match with 3 minutes of the half remaining. By then, the decision that would kill people had already been made, not that afternoon, but years earlier, and left in a drawer. From the first visible flame to the total destruction of the stand was about 270 seconds. 4.5 minutes. One witness said the fire moved faster than a man could run. Inside the stand, people had 2 ways to go. Forward, over a low wall onto the pitch, or backward, toward the exits at the rear. The people who went forward lived. Fans poured over the wall onto the grass, players and police pulling them clear. One Bradford player, John Hawley, dug his hands under the arms of an elderly man and hauled him over the wall. Because Valley Parade had no perimeter fencing penning spectators in, the kind of fencing standard at other grounds, the route onto the pitch was open. The inquiry later concluded that if that fencing had been there, the death toll would have been far worse. The people who went backward met locked doors. At the rear of the stand ran a narrow passageway to the turnstiles. Those turnstile gates had been locked after the match began, routine practice, meant to stop people slipping in without paying. Now they were a wall. Spectators fleeing the heat and smoke funneled into that passage and could not get out. 27 of the 56 who died were found at the rear exits and turnstiles. Some had been trying to crawl underneath them. The dead were not evenly spread across a lifetime. 11 were children. 23 were 65 or older. The oldest was Sam Firth, 86, a founder of the club's Supporters Association. 2 of the dead were Lincoln City fans, Bill Stacey and Jim West. A stand at Lincoln's ground now carries their names. The burning roof was its own weapon. Molten asphalt fell from above onto people below, injuring even those who got out. More than 260 people were hurt. Watching from across the pitch, John Helm kept commentating and was told mid-sentence that the footage was going out live around the world. He has never been able to watch it back. Emergency services still use it to train because there are few clearer records of how fast an ordinary afternoon can become a catastrophe. Police worked through the night under lights until 4 the next morning to bring everyone out. Some victims were still in their seats. The stand the letter had described was gone. The question now was, what would be said about why? The response was fast. Whether it was thorough is the question that has never fully gone away. An inquiry under Mr. Justice Popplewell opened just 25 days after the fire, heard 77 witnesses, and reported on 24th July. Its conclusions were blunt. The fire had been started by a dropped cigarette falling onto accumulated rubbish and made lethal by the timber and the asphalt roof. And, in a single sentence that indicted years of inaction, had the Green Guide been complied with, the tragedy would not have occurred. The inquiry led to immediate change, but it did something else too. It settled the story quickly. The verdict was an accident made catastrophic by negligence. The stand condemned demolition 2 days away. No one, the inquiry found, intending harm. 2 years later, a civil court divided the blame. Bradford City 2/3, the County Council 1/3, the Health and Safety Executive not liable. The judge's finding was quiet and, in its way, more damning. No one person had ever been responsible for the safety of the stand, so a hazard everyone could see was a hazard no one owned. For most people, that was the end of it. For one survivor, it was not. Martin Fletcher was 12 years old in that stand. He got out. His father, his 11-year-old brother Andrew, his uncle, and his grandfather did not. Decades later, Fletcher spent 2 months in a newspaper archive and assembled a troubling pattern. The club's chairman, Stafford Higginbotham, had been connected to a striking number of fires at other business premises over the previous 2 decades, several with insurance payouts. In his 2015 book, Fletcher stopped short of alleging arson. He asked a question instead: could one man really be that unlucky? The difference between a question and an accusation matters here. There is no finding of arson at Valley Parade. The official verdict remains that the fire was an accident. Popplewell called Fletcher's theory nonsense on its central point. The stand was condemned and worthless, so there was nothing to gain by burning it. The detective who led the investigation said the cause was unequivocally an accident. Higginbotham died in 1995, never charged with anything. But Fletcher landed one fair blow that even Popplewell partly conceded. The inquiry had been extraordinarily fast, and it never examined the chairman's finances or that pattern of prior fires, and Popplewell agreed the police should look at those other fires, calling the number remarkable, while standing by his verdict. So the honest account is not a proven cover-up. It is something harder to sit with, a disaster investigated so quickly that questions were closed before they were fully opened, and a survivor left to spend 30 years asking them alone. Whatever was left unexamined, one thing the fire made impossible was pretending the danger had been unforeseeable. It had been foreseen in writing, and the law was rewritten so that the specific gap that killed 56 people could not stay open. The change came in 2 stages. First, within months, the government acted on Popplewell's recommendations: new wooden grandstands banned, unsafe ones closed, smoking banned in wooden stands, and the Safety of Sports Grounds Act extended to the 3rd and 4th divisions. The exemption that had left Valley Parade outside the system was closed within 3 months of the fire. Then, permanently. The Fire Safety and Safety of Places of Sport Act 1987 was aimed squarely at the Bradford Gap. Any covered stand holding 500 or more spectators, at any sports ground, in any division, in any sport, now required a safety certificate, and using one without became a criminal offence. Bradford City had sat entirely outside the system, with a stand holding 3,000. After 1987, a stand a fraction of that size could no longer be ignored. The category of too small or too low a division to matter was abolished. This is the pattern this channel keeps returning to. Safety rules are rarely born from imagination. They are written in blood, usually after somebody saw the danger first and was ignored. At Bradford, the danger had been described in writing 10 months before the fire: the timber, the rubbish, the carelessly discarded cigarette, by a man who had only climbed up to look at the roof. The stand he warned about was already condemned, due to be torn down that Monday. It killed 56 people first, in 4.5 minutes. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next episode.